Ooh, child, I'm cold. I'm cold. I was freezing. Hold on. Because I'm just going to turn the AC down before I freeze my ass to death. I'm excited. I feel like we might be off to a better start. What if we misunderstood Wilfredo Lam from the very beginning? Wilfredo Lam once said, I knew I was running the risk of being misunderstood, either by man in the street or by the others. But a true picture has the power to set the imagination to work, even if it takes some time. And this is a quote from Fanchet. And I acquire this information from the MoMAs When I Don't Sleep, I Dream, the Wilfredo Lam collection. Why does almost every conversation about Wilfredo Lam begin with someone else? Picasso, Breton, Surrealism, Cubism, Eurocentricity. Maybe that's the misunderstanding. There's hate. I think the other people were the ones who spoke for him. And like other people, they would reason with others' understanding rather than his understanding of himself. Now let's talk about Wilfredo Lam. And I am using this teleprompter for my notes in front of me. So if you see me looking back at it, it's because it's either helping me stay on point so that I can stay on point, and so that what I say stays on point. So I can stay on point. Because, child, I'll tell you right now, I'll be everywhere. It'll be a mess. Sorry, I'm stupid. Where's my lip? I need some chapstick. I think I'm gonna buy myself some more glasses. I have my book, so I'm gonna pull it up. His name was his full name is Wilfredo Oscar de la Concepcion Lam y Castella. I just wanted to challenge myself because I'm learning Spanish and trying to make sure that my pronunciations are top tier. Born in La Sagua La Grande on December 8th, 1902, Lam was the youngest of 8 children born from a Chinese father immigrant or indentured, I believe, to a African and Spanish descendant mother. I want to start with Wilfredo's mother. Her name is Ana Serafin Castella. Born in Sanchi Spiritus to Maria Rosario Castella. Wilfredo's grandmother was from West Central Africa and was held in bondage, which was the reason why she came to Cuba, or she was in Cuba, and would later marry a Spanish Cuban, and his name was Perfecto Castella. This granted her freedom, I believe, and subsequently their daughter, Anna, would become free at birth. Now, Lam's father's name was Lam Yam, or known as Enrique Lam Yam, and his father was from Canton. Sorry, I put this chapstick on and I got like some furry stuff in my lips. But his father was born in Canton. His father was maybe around the age of 70 to 80 when he started fathering all 8 of his children with Anna. Some sightings would say that he was born around 1820 and died around 1926, so around the time Lam was 24 years of age. And growing up, his culture was a mix of a lot of things. His environment, his community, Chinese, Afro-Cuban, overall Spanish culture. Where he lived in Cuba was very popular, or not popular, that was basically the Caribbean, for the sugar plant, very fertile. So they harvested, grew, farmed sugar plants. So there was some indentured Chinese immigrants that lived there. They lived not too far down from the Afro-Cuban neighborhood that Fredo grew up in. And I do want to touch on the story that he had when he was around the age of 5. So this was 1902, or sorry, this was 1907. And the story goes, it's a short story, but when Lam was a child, he woke up one night and saw a shadow casting in his room and was scared. Later to find out that it was a bat. And Lam would say that this was his awakening for his artistry, for his recognition within himself. for his spirituality. I think that was his awakening for a lot of things, but most importantly, his imagination. And Wilfredo has said that it sets your imagination to work, just like that night when he was 5. So, when he was a child growing up, he was around a lot of spiritual themed communities. One specifically of his godmother, Ma Antonica Wilson. And she was deeply respected in her community as a Oshun priestess, and Oshun coming from the Orishas. So, Yoruba-speaking people who came to Cuba via slavery later developed a version of their belief system from back in West Africa. This was developed into Lukumi, or Santeria, among others, but this practice seemed to stimulate Lam the most. Ma was Lam's godmother, although they didn't have a direct genetic link. It was known that she had sought spiritual protection over him as her godchild. And this also might be a reason why he is so connected to his spiritual side, because not only that incident as a child, because he grew up around a priestess and other people who were fluent in Lukumi or Santeria. In 1916, Lam and some of his family members moved to Havana. He decided to go to the Escuela Profesor de Pintura. It's like a tongue tie. I'm trying to say it. Escuela Profesional de Pintura, Sculptura Academia de San Alejandro, an art school in San Alejandro. All that just to say that, because I'm learning Spanish. I think I said that before, and I'll say it again. I'm learning Spanish, so I'm trying to practice my pronunciation. Please do not do it. This is actually funny to me, because before he decided to go into the art program, he was actually in the legal one, but quickly abandoned it. And I draw a parallel to this because I feel like that decision to go to law was more so for security rather than him actually liking it. Besides the moral principle of injustice, which also shows up in his artwork. Before Wilfredo met Picasso, he already had exhibits in Salon de Bellas Artes and received quite the praise, to the point to being granted a scholarship to further his education in Spain. And this was around the age of 21, so about 1923. During this time in Spain, he meets his wife, Eva, and marry in 1927. And they have a son together named Wilfredo Victor. The different political struggles are increasing in different ways and start to catch his eye, as Wilfredo does, care about the conditions of Spain, because he lives there. That's where he's developing his life. He goes on to have his solo show, and this is at the Gallery Beltres Madrid. I think I said that right. He would later meet other artists and poets, and they gave him the courage he needed to continue his life in Europe. His reputation was blossoming and would later be praised for being strong and brave, synthetic, where each line has its just value, even to the point where they say Lam will triumph, and that tells you a lot. According to this archive of Cosmopolitan in 1929. And sadly, in 1931, Wilfredo Lam experiences an extreme loss of his wife and son to a very brutal disease at the time, tuberculosis. And nowadays, tuberculosis isn't necessarily a death sentence, but back then, he would do what he could to gather enough funds to pay for their bills and also get medical supplies as needed. This moment in his life probably had to be the most disheartening for him. But he seemed to have pulled up by his bootstraps and gained the courage he needed to continue in such a painful time in his life. And I think he gained this courage when he went on to join this political organization. He would help out where he could, and either would make flyers and would later work in an ammunition factory, or I guess a munition factory that made ammunition along with other things. I found a quote that seems to have shown his anguish around this time for a lot of things, and especially influenced by what was going on with the war. It just keeps going down. That sad experience provoked me to great rebellions against regimes that I found make the rich richer and the poor poorer. I hope this is recording. It seems as though between 1931 and 1937, Wilfredo was very focused on his artistry and collaboration with other artists and poets. He would often share his studio space with other artists in Madrid, like painters, and would continue to go on to have solo shows while also balancing his political influences, you say? Like, for lack of a better word, like his political ideals. Yeah, sure. In July 1936, the outbreak of the Spanish War, he joins the Republican Army in November. He anticipates the defense of Madrid against the nationalist force of Francisco Franco. And I guess at this point where he continues his friendship with Cordón. Him and Cordón have been friends for about 4 years at this point, give or take. His friend Cordón hires him to work in a factory where he assembles anti-tank bombs, and after 6 months he's working in this factory and falls ill of chemical poisoning. In March, he is sent to a sanitarium in northern Barcelona, and this is where he meets Helena Holzer, a German chemist and director of the tuberculosis laboratory at Santa Colombia Hospital. Sorry, I meant to say Santa Colomba. It just looks so familiar to Colombia. Whom he will later marry, and she said one thing, and I actually don't like her. She was, so I was happy when they got divorced, because she said that one thing, and I was like, do you not believe it? In 1938, Lam leaves Spain due to increasing struggles in the Civil War of Spain. Not only did his meeting with Helena feel like this was a lifeline to his wife and son, but they left Spain, and he was leaving Spain in a terrible condition. And the life that he was building with his deceased wife and his son were kind of, that part of his life is left behind when he left Spain. I don't know that it's possible he felt like he was leaving them behind too. I think a lot of this was just a lot of change in Wilfredo's life, and let's continue to see how he transforms from this experience. Okay, so looking back, I think I want to look at a few, just his original paintings from the beginning of his career that demonstrate heavily just his artistic startings. Okay, so for one, I want to show you this painting. This is his self-portrait of 1923. It was oil on canvas. It was a very technical portrait of himself. His application, his technique, it seems spot on. It almost seems like it's formulated. It is him as he develops this artistic vision. And also the untitled portrait of Lam, his father, in 1922. And again, this is showing two perspectives, the sketch and the paintings of his work. And you'll see the change as he develops. And this is actually very common amongst artists. Picasso had a similar transformation. He, as a youth, he started off as very technical with realism and eventually moved over to cubism later on in his career. We have another oil painting. This one's on burlap from 1925 called Soul or Sun. After his wife dies his wife and son die in 1931, you see a prominent shift. So there's that painting. And then we look at another painting that he makes in 1932 called Untitled Urban Landscape. And all of his work is beautiful. All of it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. But this one almost feels like it's like the soul that painted it was depressed. The soul was literally just showing what it saw. The bare bone, no magic in it. And you can see throughout, his career that he has this magic to his art. But at this point, it seems like, here's a piece, here you go. You like it? And again, I'm not saying that I like, it's just, it's very formulated. I have some more pieces in between that time period, but we're gonna move on to as the Spanish Civil War developed. He does this one painting called La Guerra Civil, the Spanish Civil War in 1937. And it's a wash on paper mounted on canvas. He did this a lot of times. For financial reasons, he would start off with the paper pieces with gouache, and then later on, when he could afford canvas, he would apply it onto that canvas. I think there's some issues that they have preserving these pieces, but they're doing great so far. It's holding up great. I was just at the MoMA, and when I saw it, I didn't tell the difference because, of course, I fell in love with the pieces. I was like, wow, I would buy every scrap, nickel, and penny of it if I was a collector. But in his pieces, I don't think we really see these expressions before. I mean, the central piece right here is angry. It's displaying war. It's displaying fights, and you can see it in the composition. You have angle going this and this way, and I'm thinking that these bodies at the bottom are people, and you can tell the ones that are losing life and the ones that have died, as the black is the background or the part of the painting he doesn't really want you to pay attention to, or not pay attention to it. But this is a part of the piece where it is what it is. They're dead. They don't have life anymore. There's no color to them. And the ones that are swiftly going, you can actually see this one at the bottoms. The head is darker blue than the rest of the body. To me, that looks like the life is draining out of them, slowly but surely. All of these characters, it's beautiful. But you can see, and this is an anti-fascist subject, not very beautiful, but very truthful. That's what they said. Miriam M. Basillo, guest tempted. I remember, honestly, my art teacher, Mr. Wilson, I remember he handed me a artist pronunciation. I have it somewhere in this house, but to this day, I still like, dang, is my pronunciation that bad where you have to be like, here you go, man. Art baby, take what you will and stop sounding like a dumbass. Quote from this book here. Where does it say? It was specifically about the dead bodies. So for this piece, the deadline was April 30th of 1937, and with Lam's illness from that chemical poisoning that we were talking about, the scarcity of art supplies delayed his work past the due date, but he went forward with the idea. It's like this. You see some dead bodies and some women weeping over them, and civil guards and more. It is an anti-fascist subject. Not very beautiful, but very truthful. And that's exactly what it was. It wasn't the most beautiful, but it was truthful. These disagreements, these things need to change, and who are the people that end up suffering from it the most? Do you think it's the rich and wealthy, the people at the top, or do you think it's the people that they don't care about? It was a parallel back then for us as it is now. This is why art is important. This is a form of history, and I dare say, are we repeating this history? Anywho, that was the piece. We're gonna keep that there. We spoke about it. Gonna reapply to Japanese. That search would eventually lead him somewhere unexpected. Back when we were talking about the search for who he was. Back when we were talking about the changes in his artwork and developing his visual language. So around the time that Wilfredo starts noticing these changes, he is now transported to Paris. Of course, it didn't just happen that way, Martinique, but we're in the phase of his life where we're talking about Paris. And Lam said, I painted relentlessly, so much so that my little hotel room was full and I could hardly move, let alone paint in it. Manolo, one of Lam's friends, gives a letter of introduction for Wilfredo to Pablo Picasso. who welcomes him and introduces him to Picasso's inner circle. I want you to see. I want you to see how it took him being closer to 40 before he actually met Picasso. I just wanted to make sure you remember that. Lam spent almost 2 decades becoming an artist before Picasso even shook his hand. Now, I will say that this is the time where Wilfredo is introduced to a French gallerist named Pierre Loeb. This gallerist goes on to purchase all of Lam's productions, down to the last paper, according to Lam himself. Picasso gave him the contact needed to make a name for himself in France, but not necessarily his essence as an artist. By the time that Picasso met Lam wasn't an unknown artist waiting to be discovered. He had already spent years studying, exhibiting, and surviving, and searching for a language that felt like his own. Picasso was a help for Lam to get access in Paris, but not his identity. Paris opened the door, but Cuba definitely gave him his complex visual language. No lie. That was messed up. That was cold. That was cold. I hope I fix it. I want to cry because that means I would have to re-record that entire opening. I pray that I didn't have to do that. I hate trying new things at the last minute. I'm sorry, you guys. It's my fault. Nearly 20 years goes by before Wilfredo comes back home to Cuba. He sees his home still in its same stage with prejudice and silencing of the minority's voice, but he also doesn't come back the same man that left. He carries with him a little piece of Europe, but sees Cuba differently. Sometimes you have to leave home before you really see it. So who reconnects him back home, when he returns? His sister Louisa, or Eloise. His sister Eloisa. This is where she explains to him in length the Afro-Cuban traditions in detail. She reconnects him with practices that had surrounded him as a child. He was the youngest, so it would make sense that he wasn't fully aware of the traditions as a child, whereas his older siblings probably deeply understood what it was. The Lukumi traditions, Santeria, Orishas, rituals, ancestors. Spirituality wasn't symbolism for him. It was more than that. It was his connection, his roots to Cuba, to the Caribbean, to his heritage, and he took pride in that. And actually, I'm remembering that Wilfredo going through Pablo's collections and saw an African mask, and Wilfredo was looking at it, and Picasso said that, hold on, good thing I highlighted it. Yes, here it is. In the memoir Mon Amitié avec Picasso, 1938, Lam describes how Picasso reacts to his admiration of the African sculpture in the Spanish artist's collection. Apparently, Picasso resorted to blatant sensualism, saying that Lam should be proud because this sculpture was made by an African and Lam had African blood. Hey Siri, what's the definition of essentialism?
Essentialism means a belief that things have a set of characteristics which make them what they are, and that the task of science and philosophy is their discovery and expression, the doctrine that essence is prior to existence.
Yeah, I still don't know how to take it. I guess I do know how to take it, and the way I'm taking is thank you. Like, almost, I don't know how to take it, but it's almost like fetishizing. Thank you. Yes, I am of African descent. Thank you for noticing. But it was almost like I more so think that Wilfredo and mine thought that these Europeans considered his culture primitive. But he also recognized how the art scene in Europe was almost sanitizing to artistry. I want to go back and read on each paragraph and what he says, but I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to tell you is what I read, okay? He said that if seeing something from his people in something as sanitized as Europe was, while he was grateful for it, it was almost like they stripped the meaning of it. They stripped the actual meaning of the belief systems in this time, the belief systems that made this art what it is. And it kind of infuriated him, rightfully so. I would be infuriated as well. It seems as if this is cool and fine for you guys, but this is my lived experience. And I want you to respect it, which they did, of course, in their own way. But I think after a while it's infuriating being around people who don't quite yet understand you. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if I heard that, I'd be a little uncomfortable, but in a thanks kind of way. Coming back home to him from my research, I'm trying not to mess up anything that he might have felt. And of course, we can only say so much because in years past. What time is it? It's 4:02. Oh, I'm almost done recording. It seems as if he had to reintegrate into his culture. It's been some time. And he said, here in Cuba, there were things that were pure surrealism. Like I said, this was his lived experience. He didn't need to absorb something that he didn't have. He had it. It was within him. And he carries this throughout his work. That's why I feel like he really embodied his inner child. He really embodied that part of himself that he wasn't scared to turn off because people might misunderstand him. He was okay with people's misunderstandings of him. It was whether or not in their responsibility, whether or not they would understand him. He gave them who he said he was, and if they ran off and thought something else or thought that it wasn't enough of an explanation or sanitized him, their loss, not his. He continued to live a life of artistry and abundance and pride in his community that he greatly seemed to have poured into. That's an amazing thing, especially of that time period. He really identified with that Afro-Cuban identity because that was him. Yes, he was a Cuban, but in a lot of ways, he was Afro first. The landscape that they lived in, I wanted to add, played a huge role in his imagination because especially in La Jungla, have we even gotten to that yet? Especially in La Jungla. And a lot of the works of this time period, you can see where he is absorbing, and this might be a little bit of nostalgia kick for him, you know? He's really indulging in his environment, and if you find clips and stuff online of him just walking around his community, engaging with the people, you can see where he's yeah, this is my town, this is where I'm from, and it was cute. It was wholesome watching some of those archived clips. I love research. I might continue to do this. Just saying. The landscape was vast and fertile. You can't invent imagination. And I would think a vast, lush, fertile landscape like the Caribbean, specifically the Cuban landscape in this case, would have things that make your mind run rampant. And in case, this is where things would make your mind run rampant and at all hours of the day. So yes, that story was the start of a journey for him as an artist, not just a surrealist, but an artist who was fully in touch with his inner child, like I said. And that's when Lam painted that work, La Jungla, that defined his career. Oh, I was am I recording? Okay, so for La Jungla, let me find it in my book so we can talk about it. So I'm gonna look down, but I'm gonna have the piece here. These creatures are these hybrid people, beings. For this super vibrant piece, I just want to say that the first impression I got of this when I was doing my research was Cuba's difficult past and present, history of slavery and indentured to industrial prostitution. He first sought to contextualize rather than appropriate Black culture, reversing the practice of primitivism in European modernism. And he kind of flipped that term. Actually, reading this often, he constantly fixated on this primitive idea. And I think the primitiveness was from the fact that Picasso's interest in African masks, when he was showing him through his studio, was, again, not only sanitation, but like they looked at it like, oh, this was old art, this was way back when, this don't matter now, we're here now, we're the modernists now. And I'm doing too much, but I said what I said, okay? But he constantly reversed this primitiveness, and you can see the influence of these African mask creatures, or these African mask hybrid beings that represented a lot for him. And this piece has great, sophisticated contrast in a lovely way. He is really utilizing this blue, and he is accenting this blue with other colors more than the other colors dominating in the blue accenting. So I wonder, not even wonder, the blue and the green represents the nature that area. Like, you have to remember, this area is very fertile. So here you can see the sugar canes in the background. You can start from the top and then just move your way down. Like, why would he show sugar canes? Sugarcane wasn't just a plant in the Caribbean, specifically Colombia in this specific instant, but it represented the reason for exploitation in the Americas and the Caribbean Sea. It built wealth for some and slavery for others, but why would Wilfredo use sugarcane? Essentially trapping his figures inside of it. And I think this is why these, like, calling them figures is one thing, but these beings, these hybrid beings, represent the spirits, the ancestors, the demigods, the laborers. There is a part where it was plantas de home, plant man, or home de, something like that. And maybe that's a mix of Spanish and French now that I'm thinking about it. Anywho, these characters, in my eyes, I see as ancestors. They continue to live and breathe amongst us in the forest. They continue to represent the spirits that have led the land to be what it is, and their children that went on to have children and have children and continue on and on. Like, it's almost like for me, it's like a familial feeling, you know, like, they're all smiling and they seem like they're all interacting with each other. There are some parts where it's like, it's hard to watch, because especially knowing that this was a representation of the industrial prostitution. And this is what it says in the book. The upper half of the picture is crowded with a dense weave of sugarcane stalks, bent arms, broad leaves, and three faces inspired by African masks. To the right, a smaller crescent moon face is framed by shrouded hands and a pair of upturned shears. A row of the breast and buttocks runs along the painter's midline, and towards the bottom, two diagonally placed cut cane stalks produced a shallow ledge for figures, enormous hand-like feet. I noticed that too. I was like, yeah, they look like these feet do kind of look like hands. That's cool. Yeah, I want to get into all of his pieces. I'm gonna really sit down and try to dissect each piece and kind of look through what he was saying about them. But I literally just sat here and stared at it for 5 minutes. I was just staring at it. And it's because it represented his environment, and especially when he came back home. He came back home around in the 40s. When he came back home, you know, it didn't change quite yet. Yeah, that's why he did what he did. It didn't change quite yet. I found that the mask horses symbolized power, movement, and spiritual challenges, or spiritual change. It just depends on the context. We have a crowded space. The space is so crowded, it's uncomfortable. Like, from side to side, it's covered with density. But this brings me back to what he originally said. I knew I would run the risk of being misunderstood. And I finally understand what he meant. Why people misunderstood him. Because people kept trying to categorize him. European, primitive, realist, cubist, Picasso student, instead of Wilfredo. instead of Wilfredo. That was by choice. They decided not to listen to the fact that Wilfredo was telling them exactly who he was. They did not want to believe that he was pointing to Africa, Cuba, the Caribbean, the memories of the slaves, the poetry of their descendants. What did Wilfredo Lam necessarily want the viewer, the onlooker, to see? Not a fantasy, not just any reality. But I believe it was a reality where spirituality wasn't separate from the everyday life. And honestly, I believe that's how the Caribbean mind thinks. That's how the landscape is why it is. That was their landscape. That's what it was. And why would you accept anything else but the greenery, the leaves, the community that you develop when you are home and free amongst your people? I mean, Fredo did move back to Paris after a while, and that's where he did pass. But I still think he almost he owed it to himself, discover who he was as a person. And this wasn't just taking his homeland and exporting it for other people to see, but this was his identity. This is who he saw himself as. So it was his right to explain who he was and what environment created him. This is a time where identity wasn't just one thing. You are allowed to identify with many. The true definition of understanding. Why did this move me, you might say? I saw someone whose work centered Afro-Caribbean identity, where modernism art rather treated as if it was an influence on the margin. Hold on, go back. I think what surprised me was the fact that my work looked at Picasso and yet wasn't even given a thought of day whenever he wasn't in the line of sight. I could say that, but I don't know if that's complete. It's not fact. These are all my interpretations of what I read. Again, I wanted to give a different perspective of Wilfredo, where it wasn't where we really understood him as a human. I think a lot of times we see the artwork and we see certain things that happen in their lives, and it is what it is, but I wanted to inject a little human in between the lines. I wanted it to seem like he was an artist with real feelings in a time where art was a way to make a living, and he stood by that. I don't know. That's just my thought process on it. I'm an artist too, so my brain is kind of everywhere. I see a lot of things that help me explain things, but one thing is Wilfredo didn't stop being an artist when he left Picasso's line of sight. I know his friend sent that letter. I'm pretty sure he saw it. I'm not gonna make assumptions. I think this was also around mid to early life, where the influences of Lukumi or Santeria was seen as something to hush around this time, instead of the thought process behind their lifeline to their ancestry, to their heritage. It's funny how all of this started from one visit to the MoMA, one long-awaited visit to the MoMA, where I was excited to see Diego Rivera, Salvador Dali, and Pablo Picasso. I'm happy that I still am thinking about Wilfredo, though. It's been months, and I'm still thinking about how impactful his artwork was. I mean, I still got more to go. I guess what I'm getting at is that Wilfredo's work is the best way to understand him and what influenced him. It's to finally listen to what he spent his entire career trying to say. And I guess I was just really excited to listen. And I still have more to say. Would you stick around?